Hello and welcome to the How to Talk to Girls podcast. I am your host, Trip Kramer from tripadvice.com. And on today's episode, I'm pulling another old interview that I did a few years back, and it's about conversation. So we're going back to the roots here of what it means to talk to girls, because that's what this podcast is called, How to Talk to Girls. And I know that you are probably struggling with conversation because conversation is one of the more difficult things to learn when you're trying to meet and attract women. So I have a great interview for you today that talks all about that. Now, before we get into that, I want to tell you about something that only a lot of you might have if you've been watching my YouTube videos. It's not something that I talk about here on the podcast, which is my mistake, because I know a lot of you who listen to the podcast might not necessarily listen to or watch, I should say, the YouTube videos. So I want to tell you about a free gift that I have for you that I created just maybe about 3 to 4 months ago. It's called Chick Crack. And what it is the conversation topics that women love to talk about. So what does this have to do with you, and why would you want to get something like this? Well, first of all, it's 100% free. All you got to do is go to tripadvice.com/chick-crack, and you will be typing in your email, and you will be receiving it in your email, but also add it to my newsletter, and you'll be learning conversation topics that make it easy to get conversation flowing. That's right. So this is going to be really great if you're talking to a girl, you run out of things to say, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I can bring up one of these topics of conversation that will get her actually interested. It will spark her interest more in the conversation, and then give you time to display your personality for you guys to get to know each other more, and then therefore get her attracted. So I want you to again check that out, tripadvice.com/chick-crack. And I want to highlight really quickly, someone left a review on the podcast, and I like when you guys leave reviews. I like when you're honest with me. You tell me, whether I'm doing a good job, whether I'm doing a bad job. Luckily for me, most of you guys seem to like it a lot. So I want to just kind of highlight one of the people who ended up leaving a review, and I will do the same for you. If you leave a review on the podcast, I'll shout you out, because it's really awesome to hear from you. So we got someone named HFFJHHG, which obviously is not their name, but they said, "I love your info, Trip, thanks." And I know that's so funny. It's like, okay, cool. Well, still, I like to hear the positive reviews. Hey, I like to hear the negative reviews too. Let's actually look at a negative review really quickly. So this is from a year ago, March 3rd, 2016. The Burmanator says, "Wow, just wow. Men, please do not take the advice given in this podcast as fact. Have listened to several episodes and absolutely do not condone the message Trip is asserting about the roles of men versus women. His advice is speculative, uninformed, and shallow. To be sure, it has a few good nuggets in there and here and there, but I think the show has far more potential to do harm than good." You know what I love about this? This is a 1-star review, by the way. I love that he still said there's a few good nuggets in there. I think if there's a few good nuggets on there and there's a 5-star potential rating, we can maybe get that up to like 2 stars or 3 stars, right? It can't be 1 star if there's a few good things. Anyways, if you listen to my podcast regularly, you know that my information is far from shallow. And if anything, it's probably the more deep information on iTunes or on Stitcher that has to do with dating advice. But you know that because you're listening right now. But anyways, thought I'd just read that out loud because it's kind of funny to read the negative reviews. My point is I'll read a review no matter what. So leave something for me and we'll shout you out. Anyway, let's get into the podcast here. Right now, you're about to listen to an interview with me all about conversation and how to take it to a deeper level, not a shallow level. Here it is.
What are some techniques that you teach your guys in order to go beyond, the light openers and actually have a good conversation with a woman?
Absolutely. One of the techniques is something I call active listening. Okay. So in order to have a really powerful conversation with somebody, and this isn't just, for women that you're talking to that you want to potentially date, but this is for networking, business, family, friends, any kind of relationship. Active listening is the key, and it's exactly what you think it is. You're listening actively, okay? So I always tell, all the guys out there who are really nervous, don't listen to what's going on in your head. You want to think, guys want to think so much and think about what they want to say next, right? The problem with that is that information is given to you by listening to the other person, right? So if you can listen in, and hone in really on what the person you're talking to is saying, that's going to give you material on what to talk about. Okay. And of course, you can go as deep as you want. So even if you're talking about fluff conversation, it's very, very simple to take fluff conversation and turn it deeper. And a simple way to do that is just asking someone their opinion on something and asking them how they feel about whatever topic you're talking about, right? So for example, if you're just talking about favorite foods, or you're talking about restaurants, so you're talking about, oh yeah, I was at this place last week. I had some good sushi. And then you ask the person, so do you like sushi? Have you ever tried it? Like, what places have you been to? Like, tell me about your experiences with it. And then they start talking about that. And now you're talking about just food.
Yeah, I want to talk about sushi. Now you have me hungry. All right, exactly. Go on.
That's what it is. It's like you can talk about anything and you just ask them, how they feel about it or their favorite whatever, just to take it a little bit deeper. And when it comes to conversation, tangents are key. Okay, so I always tell guys, you don't want to stay on the same topic for too long, even if it's a really good topic. Even if you guys both love sushi and you guys are just having a ball talking about sushi for 30 minutes, it's not going to help with attraction. You need to go on multiple tangents and really get to know a person and get to know them on multiple levels. Okay. So when you do that and you go on many tangents, that's what's going to have the girl walk away and be like, wow, that was a great conversation.
So do your guys that you teach stress out about what topics to bring up?
Yeah, all the time. So yeah, this is what I tell them. I tell guys, and this is coming from this natural kind of method. Okay. So when it comes to conversation, here's the great part about it. It doesn't matter what you're really talking about. Here's the secret. It's all about the energy you put into the conversation. So what I'm saying is that if you sound excited about something, and this could be the most boring thing in the world, you can literally give me any topic and I can make it sound so interesting and exciting because I'm putting energy behind it. That's the key to exciting conversations. And when a girl's having that exciting conversation with you, again, she's going to be more attracted. So, obviously I would say there's topics to stay away from. You don't want to talk about
religion, politics,
anything that's going to cause some kind of debate. And the reason is because debates aren't really sexy and they can go into an area of her just being exhausted trying to, fight with you or talk about something or,
Yes.
it can go in a place you don't want to go. And plus, here's what's happening too with intense topics like that, like politics or religion, is you're now talking about the subject itself and less about you and less about the other person. So now the conversation is, I should say, so far on a tangent that it's not even helping you two connect on a level. Instead, you're just talking about that topic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So is that a common mistake that guys make?
Yeah, that's a big mistake. You don't want to be talking about those things, especially, it doesn't matter, any place, in a social setting, in a casual setting, you don't want to talk about that stuff. It's really just more important. And this is another mistake a lot of guys make, is you want to find the balance between the conversation in terms of how much you're talking, how much she's talking. So, okay, for example, right now in this interview, I'm yapping my head off. This is not what you want to do when you're talking to a girl when you first meet her.
Right. This is how the format's supposed to be, you guys.
Right. This is for an interview, but this is, yeah. You want to be really conversing with them, right? So, but that's the thing, is you don't want them to talk too much either. I get a lot of guys, and this was a mistake that I had too. I'd have a conversation with a girl, I should say, quote, conversation, where I'd walk away and be like, wow, that went amazing, because she was talking so much. So I assumed since she was talking so much that she was interested in me, right? Because she was like into the conversation. She's yapping her head off. I'm like, yeah, that was awesome. Only to find I'd never hear from her again. Okay?
Yeah.
And the reason is because since she talked so much, I didn't talk at all. She didn't feel a connection toward me. She walked away maybe thinking it was a great conversation, but then realizing she knows nothing about me or who she talked to.
Yeah. And I've had that on the opposite end of the coin as well, where I'd been with a guy and he just talks about all of his stuff and never once asked me anything about what I'm interested in.
Right.
And it makes you feel kind of like a weird used dish rag at the end, I was just like,
Yeah.
okay, that was a time waster.
Yeah, exactly. And guys, listen, you should be qualifying girls just as much as they're qualifying you. If you're talking to a girl and she's yapping her head off, but she's not asking you questions, then forget this girl. She's obviously, not showing any interest in you.
Yeah,
She's just kind of really into herself. This is
exactly.
a girl you should say, okay, see you later. Let me find someone who wants to really get to know me,
Exactly.
you know?
Yeah. So are there other topics that you can give to the guys is just to help them out a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, if you're meeting girls in a social setting, I like to use this one transition. So after you approach a group of girls and you're like, hey, you girls look like fun, I had to come over and say hi, right? Usually they'll give you a nice bubbly, hey, what's going on? I love to use this next little transition. You say, so how do you girls know each other? Okay. So what this is going to do now is this is going to get them talking about themselves a little bit. And this is going to be giving you information to talk about, right? So it's going to be a little superficial at first, and they're going to be like, "Oh, we met in college," and da da da. And so then, by active listening, right, you're hearing, okay, they're talking about college. Boom, you can go in and say, okay, what college did you guys go to? Let me guess, it was a crazy party school, right? So you make a comment on it, or you ask them a question about it, but you just want to keep listening to whatever they're saying, and you work off of that, right? So, and then all of a sudden you're talking about college. You can share a story about something funny that happened to you in college, right? So think about funny stories, interesting times, things that you can bring up and share, any kind of stories that you have. Here's a really good exercise if you're listening to this is take a minute to just write down a bunch of stories, your funny stories in life. Even if they don't sound like they'd be funny to someone else, whatever is just interesting to you, some stuff that you had go on in your life, write those down. Okay. Think about those for a minute. Just remember those. And I'm telling you, it's going to be now that you're kind of more conscious of those stories and interesting times in your life, you're going to find that it's actually very easy to bring those up in conversation when someone's talking about something because you can use whatever they're saying and go off into one of your fun stories. So, yeah.
Yeah, and if a guy doesn't stick on a topic at least a little bit with me, like if he just asks me a question, so where you're from, and I tell him, and then he's on to his next question immediately after that, then it kind of makes me feel like, well, what is this, an interview, or like I get the idea that he's not really that into me, that he doesn't really want to know things about me. He's just kind of going through the motions.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you literally just nailed it right there. I couldn't have said it better myself. That interview mode right there, it's not that the content is superficial. It's just that he's not really asking you to get to know you. He's just kind of just asking the questions to hopefully keep up a conversation with you. And that kind of shows a weakness there, It shows that the guy doesn't really, either know how to hold a conversation or just care in general, right? So
Yeah.
therefore, that's unattractive.
Exactly. And then I've had other guys who I've connected with so deeply on one particular topic that I was like, oh, this is like my cool new buddy, And so he becomes like somebody that I look at or that I automatically put into the friend compartment, into that box. And so what kind of tips can you give guys listening on how not to end up in friend zone?
Absolutely. So this is, another thing I was just thinking about in terms of the common mistakes that a guy makes, when they're in conversation, and it's touching, right? Is that they're not doing any touching. Because again, that's just part of it, but that's a really big barrier right there, right? So we can have the most interesting conversation in the world. And if I'm not doing any flirting or any touching or any hugging or any, anything like that, then you're not going to feel that sexual energy from me. You're only going to just be feeling, whatever, oh, this is a fun conversation. I like listening to his story. But that's what they have to feel, right? A woman has to feel that sexual energy, and that comes through touching. And so I get a lot of guys who will get a number from a girl or have a great conversation with the girl, but they haven't done any of that flirting. They haven't done any of that touching. They haven't done anything where they've told the girl that they think she's sexy or think, they throw out a compliment or something like that. And if they get the number, the girl never texts him or calls him back. Or they can't get the number because the girl's like, yeah, this was a fun conversation, but I'm not going to give him my number because I don't really need any more friends right now.
So that was short but sweet, but I still just wanted to kind of jump back in here and let you know that that is the end of the interview. I pretty much cut it off there because there was not much happening after that that was going to help you. So hope you enjoyed that. Like I said, please leave a review for the podcast if you enjoy it. And even if you hate it, I want to hear from you also. So go ahead and do that. And also you can email me any questions you have or any ideas for the podcast, trip@tripadvice.com. And of course, that's trip with 2 P's. Hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to speaking to you next week because I put out new podcast episodes and they get released every single Wednesday.